Hello, and welcome to Conquering Finale. My name is Jason Lafredo, and today we are outsmarting smart shapes again. Specifically, I'm going to show you what happens when you start moving smart shapes between files. And I've got two files set up here, a source file on the left and a target file on the right. And you can see that in my source file, there's a whole bunch of extra smart lines that don't exist in the target file. There's a couple ways to do this. We can either do it with libraries. We can actually export smart lines and import smart lines from one file to the other, or we can simply copy and paste. And there's a couple little tricks to both of those things. It's not complicated, but I think it's worth mentioning because I feel like once you get the theory behind it, it will sort of make sense for you. So that's why I thought it was important to do a dedicated video for this. So let's do it the first way by exporting a library. Now, the thing with SmartShape libraries is that the SmartShape library only consists of the elements that exist in the custom lines, the smart line selection dialog box. So this entire dialog box, everything that's in here essentially makes up the quote-unquote library for smart lines. And so none of these settings, for example, the slur settings, the hairpin settings, all that other stuff can never be exported and imported from one file to another, unfortunately. All right. So we're really only dealing with these elements. And the trick to this I found out, because I've tried this a few different ways recently, is that if you were to export the library file for this file, you'd get all of the original smart lines in the library as well as the unique ones. And I've got 4 unique smart lines that I created specifically for this file. So what you're doing is essentially exporting all of them, which is a little bit problematic because it simply adds it to the bottom of the list for the target file, which is not ideal because then you got a lot of duplicates, and actually some of the duplicates end up with funky things in them, and it's really weird. So anyway, I'm going to show you a better way to do this. And the first thing you want to do is save your file, close it, and I'm actually going to duplicate it. So now I've got a copy of that file. I'm going to open the copy, and put it over here. And what I'm going to do is go back into that smart line selection dialog box. And remember, we're just exporting the unique. We only want to export the unique lines, right? So there's no reason to have the rest of these lines in here. So I'm just going to select all of them. Just click and then shift click to get all of them selected, except for the last 4. And then just hit delete. And of course, it's going to tell me that some of these are in the score already. Would you like to remove them? Yes, it's fine. Again, this is a dummy file. I'm not going to keep this file. I'm going to throw it away in a minute anyway. And so now I just have these 4 unique smart lines in the library. Select, this is fine, all good. And we're good to go. So now we can go to File, Save Library, and we can choose the smart lines. And this is what we'll do. Click OK. And this will create the name for it, Jason's Lines. Put it on my desktop. Click Save, and we're good to go. Then we go into the target file, and just to show you what is in here, there is no the custom lines are all the normal custom lines that exist in the program to begin with. The last one here is that T, and so those 4 are not in there, right? But if we go to now File, Load Library, go to my desktop and find Jason's Lines and open it, it appears that nothing has happened. But if I go back into that window, you'll see that the 4 custom lines have been added to the bottom, all right? And so from here, we can use these custom lines as we need to. We can add them or whatever, and we're good to go. And once again, just to reiterate, none of these settings for custom lines will get transferred over. In fact, you can see in the left-hand file, I've got slurs and hairpins and an octave line here. And you'll see in the right file, I did the same thing, but I changed the settings for those. The slurs are a lot thicker, the hairpins are way thicker, and I changed the octave line to only read 8 instead of 8 VA, right? Again, I exported the library into this file, and these things don't change, right? So that's just one thing to know about that those settings can never be exported. In fact, what's interesting is that you can export and import document options as a library and between files, but the smart shapes, as we know, don't, there's no settings in the document options for smart shapes. It all exists in the smart shape menu, and unfortunately there's no way to export these settings as a library. It would be nice if there was, but there is not. All right. Now the other way to do this, actually what I'm going to do is, because I said I'm going to delete this, right, because this is our dummy file. So just delete that file and reopen the original source file. The other thing that we can do besides exporting and importing libraries is simply copy and paste over material. And you'll see within the left file versus the right file, I've got a bunch of smart lines here. And so what we can do is simply just copy and paste that over, right? Copy, paste. I could do this with a filter too because these notes are the same, but it doesn't matter. And you'll see that all of those things got copied over, including the unique smart lines, like this rallentando with a capital R-A-L-L, which was unique. The molto crescendo was unique. And again, I have 2 accelerandos here, which are unique. And I did this on purpose just to show you something, that it only takes a very small difference for Finale to consider one of those lines unique. In fact, the only difference between this accel line and this accel line is the thickness of the dashed line itself. It's very subtle, but you can kind of see it. But it's just enough for Finale to consider that a unique smart line, so that's why it gets copied over, right? Because otherwise it wouldn't copy over the smart lines that exist. Like, it's not copying over a copy of this first accel line, right? It's only copying over the second one because the second one is unique. It doesn't exist. In fact, if we go into that smart lines selection dialog box again, you'll see that the only thing it copied over was those 4 unique smart lines, right? There's no extra, regular, there's no second accelerando that gets copied over, no second retard or anything like that. Just the 4 that are unique. So that's how that works. And again, you'll notice that, even the crescendo, I copied it from this file to this file, but the crescendo took on the settings from this target file. As I mentioned, the crescendos in this target file I set to have much thicker lines, right? So that's what happens. Same thing with the slurs and the octave line, again, with the 8 versus the 8 VA. So it is interesting when you start copying and pasting between files, because some things will get added essentially, like the smear, because the smear didn't exist and it's a custom line. Other things will not, copy over exactly because they're items that are sort of integral to the smart shape palette, right? Like the 8VA versus the 8 here, right? So it will take on the settings in the target file. It will not carry over the settings from the source file. When you do things like this, the other thing that you can do is, if you end up with 2 accel lines like this and you don't really want the unique one, you want to go back to the default version of that, it's fairly easy to do. Just go back into the smart line selection dialog box and choose that extra accelerando line and just delete it. And what it's going to do is it's going to give you a choice here. This element is in use in the score, and you have the option to delete the element from selection palette and replace in score with, and when you press select, you can find that original accelerando line, which is right here, and select that. So now you're replacing it with number 8, I guess that was. So you can do that, or you have the option of delete element from both selection palette and score, which you could also choose to do if you need to, but probably you'd want to do this one. Delete and replace, and click OK. And that should do it. Now, these accelerandos, if I zoom in enough, you'll notice they're exactly the same. They're both the original accelerando with the slightly thinner dashed line. All right, so that's how that works. So, one more thing I wanted to mention. I almost forgot. The other thing that doesn't get copied over, by the way, I'm going back to my source file here. I'm going to show you one thing in my line selection dialog box, is the smear has a meta tool assigned to it of F, right? This is in the source file. So remember, I copied these 8 bars into the target file. However, in the target file, that smear, although it does get copied over, the meta tool does not get copied over. So meta tools will never copy over between files. And this is true of smart shapes or expressions or articulations, FYI. So just be aware of that, is that the other thing that you can't copy over besides the settings themselves is actually the meta tools. So One more limitation right there. And I believe that's it. Yeah, I think I covered it. Hopefully this has been helpful. That's basically smart lines, copying and pasting between files. There's a bit to know about it, but hopefully you know everything you need to know. All right, so once again, thanks for watching. I appreciate you coming and joining me on Conquering Finale, and I'll see you soon on some more.